All right, class, let's get going with this Northern Renaissance art. As we took a look at in our last PowerPoint presentation about artwork, we were talking about the Italian Renaissance. The Italian Renaissance, started in 1300s and moved throughout, especially northern Italy, and then it continued to move into the northern part of Europe, especially the Low Countries such as the Netherlands and the upper part of Germany, as we'll see in some of our following pieces of art. All right, let's look at Bosch's The Garden of Earthly Delights. Bosch is the last and perhaps the greatest of the medieval painters. The view of mankind and the world that he depicts is pessimistic and moralizing. Humankind has been fundamentally flawed since the expulsion of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. Bosch's philosophy, salvation is possible, but only with the greatest difficulty, and the probable fate of most humans is eternal damnation. So let's take a look at this. On the left side over here we've got the Garden of Eden. Actually over here we have the mythological unicorn, which there was a lot of superstition during that time. Down here at the bottom we have Adam and Eve, and they've just eaten the apple, and supposedly this person in the middle is Christ, giving them some guidance, and but nevertheless saying you're out. In the middle we have all of the desires and sin that's taking place in the world. Down at the bottom you've got a lot of naked people running around with a lot of lust. Up here at the top you've got four different depictions, perhaps pertaining to the four corners of the earth. Especially down here at the bottom you've got these giant fruits that people are draped over. That is to depict the pleasures of life, which is also represented in fruit. And then of course on the left hand side over here you've got hell, or eternal damnation. These large instruments that are portrayed, oftentimes instruments were portrayed as things that were virtuous and or sinful, and you've got people like crucified to them. Up here you've got people getting stabbed with spears and eaten by dragons. So this is truly a depiction of hell. So the Garden of Earthly Delights is one of the last medieval paintings, and after this, especially in the north, they started to undertake the Northern Renaissance movement. All right, let's take a look at Van Eyck's Ghent altarpiece, one of the most famous artworks of Renaissance art and one of the most renowned religious paintings in history. Is the altarpiece of the Lamb, called the Ghent altarpiece due to its location in Ghent, Belgium. It is created by Hubert van Eyck and Jan van Eyck. Jan completed the altarpiece in 1432, 6 years after his brother's death, making it impossible to know which famous painter was responsible for which panels. Regardless, the altarpiece remains a sterling example of polycrypt or hinged multi-paneled painting. As the folding altarpiece is opened, it reveals additional subjects and narratives to its audience. This is quite a large altarpiece. It's like 12 feet by 15 feet, and is truly representative of the Northern Renaissance. All right, let's talk about the Arnolfini marriage, Van Eyck's stunning double portrait. Most scholars agree bear witness to the marriage of Arnolfini, a successful Italian banker who settled in Bruges in the Netherlands in about 1421. More significantly, it is a testament to the revolution that was taking place in the Netherlandish art, which paralleled the artistic innovations in Italy. So let's take a look at this picture here. In the background, we have Van Eyck's signature. Up here we have, and this isn't the best picture of the marriage, but up here we have one candle. The one candle represents the one eye, all-seeing eye of God. Over here, this green dress that the bride has on represents fertility. She appears as if she's pregnant because of her large stomach, but that is also to show fertility. Down on the left-hand side in the background, we have oranges. Oranges were a signature of wealth, since they didn't have too many in the northern part. Oftentimes a marriage would take place in their home. And if we could see more clearly in the background, we have a mirror that reflects the perhaps the preacher or the priest that is presiding over this marriage. Also over here on the ground we have the shoes off. The shoes off also is an indication to a religious ceremony. So this is a great example of Northern Renaissance artwork that was transferred from the Italian peninsula north to the Netherlands. All right, class, let's look at Holbein the Younger's painting portrait of King Henry VIII. Holbein was originally from Germany, had been appointed the English king's painter in 1536. The portrait was created to adorn the privy chamber of Henry's newly acquired palace in Whitehall. Henry was spending vast sums to decorate the 23-acre Warren residences he had seized after the downfall of Cardinal Wolsey. The original mural features 4 figures arranged around a marble plinth: Henry, his wife Jane Seymour, and his parents Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. The mural was thus commissioned sometime during the brief marriage of Henry and Jane Seymour, likely 1536 to 37. It is a unique image of European monarchy. Henry is posed without any of the standard royal accoutrements such as swords, crowns, or scepters. Rather, the majestic presence is conveyed through Henry's aggressive posture. Henry stands proudly erect, directly facing his viewer. His legs are spread apart and his arms held from his side in a pose of a warrior or a wrestler, which he used to be. In one hand he holds a glove while the other reaches toward an ordnate dagger hanging in his waist. Henry's clothes and surrounding are ornate with original painting using gold leaf to highlight the opulence. The detailed blackwork embroidery is especially notable. He wears an array of jewelry, including several large rings and a pair of necklaces. His large codpiece and heavily padded shoulders further enhance the aggressive masculinity of his image. Bum, 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 King Henry VIII. Okay, let's take a look at Holbein's The Ambassadors. The ambassadors show 2 men, French courtiers, ambassadors from King Francis I to the court of King Henry VIII of England. The picture was painted in London, where the ambassadors had a difficult mission to protect the country's interest and try to prevent the English from making a break from the Church of Rome. These were deeply troubled times in Europe, and Holbein reveals far more than is apparent at first sight. So if we look in the upper right-hand corner, we see a crucifix. That is to represent the church. This is, on the left, the ambassador Jean d'Itteville and his friend George Saville, true ambassadors. We see the globe right here, which is a celestial globe showing the stars, perhaps using some Copernicus ideas. We have other instruments that are on this table that portray the ideas of circumnavigation of the earth and some of the new ideas that were put forth. Down here we have a globe that is showing the important countries that are relevant to France. This lute down here has 1 broken string, indicating that there is some problems with harmony between France and England and the church and other Protestant religions. But what I want to really draw your attention to is what's down here at the bottom, which is a skull. And if you were truly standing in front of this painting, to the right over to this direction, and about 6 to 8 feet away, you would see that it is a skull that is casting, like a shadow down here, the shadow of death. So this is quite the portrayal in this painting, indicating that they're foreshadowing that there was some definite trying times ahead between France and England and other countries. All right, let's take a look at Bruegel's The Fall of Icarus. When looking at the landscape of the Fall of Icarus, the first thing the viewer notices is the man plowing the field in the foreground of the painting. This is because Bruegel paints him with bright colors like white, yellow, and red, while surrounding him with darker, more subdued colors like blue and green. Also, The way the land is laid out keeps our focus in the middle of the painting. This is accomplished because the coastline forms a circle on either side of the painting, and there's a bay in the middle of it all. All of these further work continue to keep our focus in the middle. Because all of this, you may not even notice Icarus's leg sticking out of the water in the bottom right corner of this painting. So here's Icarus flopping around down here as he, fell from grace. Also, the bent shape of the leg blends with the shape of the crashing waves around it. Bruegel used all of this to keep attention off of Icarus. Perspective is very important and part of the interpretation of this painting. The foreground is full of large objects, while the background is full of small objects. It seems odd that Bruegel wanted to downplay the fall of Icarus so much. It is clear that this was intended because the title is Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. The landscape is the main focus, while Icarus is more than an afterthought. The main part of the painting shows a beautiful coastal city full of inhabitants carrying on with their way of life. It includes people plowing their fields, a shepherd herding sheep, boats coming into port for the night. Unbeknownst to all of them, Icarus is flailing around in the water right next to them. There is even a fisherman a few feet away who doesn't seem to notice. It is clear Bruegel was trying to show how unimportant Icarus truly is. Let's take a look at Bruegel's work, Netherland Proverbs. Proverbs were an important means of expression in Bruegel's day and were often expressed visually. There are many prints of similar subjects which were cheap and easy to circulate. Bruegel set out to entertain and instruct with his painting. He succeeded admirably and created a window on the world in which both a visual and moral sense. Bruegel's work has lasted throughout the time because each succeeding generation has a sense that he is addressing the issues and realities of their own time as well as those of common day. So Bruegel is one of my favorite artists. There's just so much going on in his work. It kind of reminds me of the old Where's Waldo. A couple of things to take a look at. We got the pie in the sky. So, a lot of metaphors being used here to ridicule the times that they lived in. Pie in the sky. We have a couple underneath the broom here. And that metaphor is talking about people that live out of wedlock together. And we got a lady down here fighting with some demons. We've got a guy banging his head on the wall. A gentleman shearing a pig, which is not worth his time. So you just have a lot of different things going on. Someone portraying Jesus over here. The guy throwing money away. Person trying to catch an eel. So there's some kind of symbolism all throughout this entire painting that means something to Bruegel and means something at a time. Perhaps the most important, and your eyes are kind of drawn right here in the middle. You've got a young lady pulling a blue coat over the head of what appears to be a man, and that would be showing the young lady is pulling deceit over her husband's eyes, and that she is unfaithful to him, and that there is other things going on, and the more that she pulls it down, the more that she's going to get away with. But nevertheless, Bruegel is a fantastic artist from this Northern Renaissance time period. All right, let's take a look at Durer's self-portrait. The Christ-like self-portrait was painted in 1500, shortly after Durer's 29th birthday. The painting was made in oil on a wooden panel and is now in a collection in Munich. Unlike his earlier self-portraits, and he has several, which were composed in the customary three-quarters of a view, Durer's self-portrait in 1500 depicts the artist faced squarely towards the viewer, a pose usually reserved at that time for images of Christ, which he kind of looks like. His hand touching the fur collar of his coat brings to mind the gesture of blessing and a religious icons. So it's clear that if you were to look at his previous self-portraits, that this is a much more advanced one, and he is actually taking on images of godlike images, where Christ-like images, where he is full-faced, viewing the audience. Now, the young hare, Dürer is one of the earliest artists to tackle nature studies, and this is one of the finest examples. The frightened hare has cowered down with its ears alert, ready to spring and flee. Dürer probably painted the hare from both a stuffed model and a very careful observation of live animals. The famous watercolor became very popular, and together with the praying hands and a piece of turf, has been reproduced on a massive scale in the 20th century. The important new feature of this study is the lifelike depiction of the animal, something that was unheard of before this. The hare's fur is depicted in delicate gradations and shades with a variety of brushstrokes. The mullion and transom of the windows are reflected in the shining eye, a mirror in the soul. Dürer's ability to give the animal portraits such an individual expression presumably contributed to the considerable imitation of the work. The young hare was first painted in watercolor. Dürer then applied some opaque on top of the watercolor, painting groups of lines which are no longer or shorter, thicker or finer, depending on how the fur lies on the animal's body. So this is quite revolutionary. Finally, he added the white highlights. The shadow helps to give the animal a three-dimensional appearance. Dürer added his monogram and the year in the prominent position to show that he regarded it as a finished work of art.